Hey Altenew friends, it's me for another perfect pairing for February 2020. I have 3 cards to show you all today featuring the new watercolor blooms with an old favorite of mine. This older favorite was suggested by one of you in the comments below, and it was one of my first 5 or so Altenew products I bought a few years ago. Before I reveal this pairing, I just wanted to say thank you all for your generous and kind comments you leave me and your perfect pairings ideas for future videos. I have a running spreadsheet of your suggestions, and I'm constantly thinking of ways to incorporate them into the series. So with that being said, the Watercolor Blooms 4x6 stamp set I thought would pair perfectly with Altenew Golden Garden stamp set. This is a 6x8 stamp set with sketchy outline florals and foliage. A few of the images are layerable on this stamp set for an artsy look. I have 3 ideas using this pairing, so let's get right into the first card. Oh, one thing about this pairing is that these layering images are not difficult to line up and are intended not to be very exact. I have the coordinating dies for watercolor blooms, but not for Golden Garden, so this pairing still works if you don't have a die cutting machine for 2 of the 3 cards I'll show you. And you'll see me use an acrylic block to mount the stamps instead of a stamp positioning tool like the MISTI. Okay, so I'll start with Watercolor Blooms 4x6 stamp set, Cherry Blossom and Seashore family of inks, and a 4 1/4 by 2 3/4 panel of paper. I'll start stamping the flower images with the 2 layers of flowers, then I'll add the foliage. I'll start stamping the flower images with the 2 layers of flowers, then I'll add the foliage. Like I said, not looking for accuracy here, and once I have a panel full of leaves and flowers, I'll use the coordinating dies, since I have them, and cut out the images with my mini Blossom die cutting machine from Altenew. I'll set these die cuts aside and work on Golden Garden. I'll heat emboss a few of the images with Altenew Platinum Crisp embossing powder. I stamped 2 of the leaf clusters and 2 of the flower images with a sticky embossing ink before applying the embossing powder. Once heat set, I'll use my scissors to fussy cut these images, leaving a narrow white margin around where I think a die would cut these images. So now I have these 4 Golden Garden images and several watercolor bloom images. It was at this point I wasn't sure how I wanted to arrange these 2 elements, so I played with a few composition ideas by using the portrait card grid on my Altenew cutting mat. But eventually I came to this wreath-looking formation after following the inspiration from the trifold included in your newer Altenew stamp sets. I slightly altered some of the Golden Garden images, like the leafy branches, by cutting them apart for individual leaves or smaller branches until I got the look I was going for, a balanced wreath with segmented gold, pink, and teal images. I'll take a picture of this arrangement with my phone so that I can reference back to it after making my background piece to this card. Nothing crazy for the background. I'm taking citrine metallic watercolor from the 14 metallic watercolor pan set from Altenew and adding asymmetric splatters that mirror where the flower clusters were. No such thing as too many splatters, so I went crazy with the pigment. After referencing the picture I took on my phone, I transposed the arrangement onto my card front, fixing placement as I went along. I took the crisp dye inks from earlier and a few of the smaller images and supplemented the flower arrangement with some additional foliage. So the sentiment was a happy accident. I meant to create a coordinating sentiment strip using citrine metallic watercolor again, but as I was roughly painting a scrap panel of watercolor wide enough to fit my sentiment from Paint a Flower Rose, I fell in love with the painterly look of the sentiment background. So instead of creating a rigid label style sentiment, I fussy cut the watercolor paper in a way to make it look like a brush stroke across the wreath. I white heat embossed the Your Kindness Warms My Heart sentiment on top of this metallic background and tucked it behind the arranged wreath featuring watercolor blooms and Golden Garden. I finished this card with coordinating sequins, and that finishes this first perfect pairing. For my second example using watercolor blooms and Golden Garden, I did need my larger die cutting machine to cut out this mega hello die from white cardstock. I created a chipboard-like die cut stack with 4 layers of cardstock, 3 being white and the very bottom using black cardstock. The reason for the black cardstock on the very bottom is it's going to help create a subtle outline to distinguish the die cut from my background. I never thought I would make a yellow and orange floral card. It's not in my comfortable palette, but I was surprised at how beautiful Pocketful of Sunshine and Golden Sunset family of inks went together. So again, just roughly stamping the layering images of watercolor blooms. I only used the flowers this time. And then roughly stamp the layering flowers of Golden Garden using Golden Sunset. I fussy cut all the floral images at this time. I didn't use the watercolor bloom dies to cut the flowers since I knew it would take less time to cut with my scissors. I'll set these images aside while I work on the background to this card. I used rose quartz from the metallic watercolors set and made a coral pink gradient that spans the entire length of the panel. I didn't mind that my brush strokes showed when dry. In fact, that's what I wanted so that the background coincided with the style of the stamped images. Of course, I had to add splatters to this one as well after the background was dry. I mounted the panel to my note card base and started the final assembly. I glued down the hello die cut to the bottom third of my card, and then I tucked in the flower images from both Golden Garden and watercolor blooms into areas I thought I could hide the hello die cut, but not too much to where it gets lost. And there you go. This card will definitely need a larger envelope or be hand-delivered. Okay, on to the final card. I'm stamping with 2 panels, 1 vellum and 1 light gray cardstock. I also have a jar of pure white crisp embossing powder off to the side. On my larger acrylic block, I've arranged only the leaf stamps that can be die cut from watercolor blooms. To save myself some time, I inked up all the leaf stamps at once using a sticky embossing ink. I stamped this large block twice on my gray panel before applying embossing powder and heat setting with my heat tool. I used the vellum for the Golden Garden images and white heat embossed those images as well. I used the die cuts for the watercolor blooms white heat embossed leaves and then fussy cut the Golden Garden images on vellum. On my Altenew craft mat, I have a jade metallic watercolor gradient. I was having a moment with the watercolor pan set apparently. This is sort of similar to the first card where I will arrange all the white embossed pieces in some sort of bouquet. I started with the vellum pieces first and loosely glued them down with a liquid glue. I tried my best to hide the adhesive by applying glue to the back side of the embossed images, not letting the glue on the vellum. Once I used all the vellum images, I supplemented the bouquet with the white leaf die cuts. I used this opportunity to hide the glue on the vellum by simply hiding it under the die cuts. I also added solid texture behind some of the vellum to help the vellum flowers and leaves stand out more. Once I finished the arrangement, I added a sentiment strip by white heat embossing the Live Life in Full Bloom sentiment from Paint a Flower Rose onto some gray cardstock. And lastly, I added some light green enamel dots from the Green Metals Adhesive Enamel Dots collection. And that's how I paired watercolor blooms and Golden Garden, perfect for someone you love. Make sure you share your Altenew Perfect Pairings ideas with me in the comments below. And hey, while you're there, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on endless inspiration and video tutorials from the lovely team at Altenew. Links to all the Altenew products can be found in the description box below the video as well. Thank you all so much for tuning into this Perfect Pairings with Jaycee, and I'll see you all in the next one.